So I was talking about our GPDR, it's not our GPD, it's GPDR,
Yes.
and the problem we have collecting the data, and you have a new idea.
We do.
Yes, and the idea is the intent marketing, and you're going to explain us the
Yes.
rise of the intent marketing and how it will change everything.
How it would change everything. And while GDPR is important, there are last people were talking about it, but there is a way to meet the customer at the moment of intent without doing it. So we'll talk about it.
Okay,
Thank you so
go ahead, you have the stage.
Thank you. So thank you so much for letting me speak to you in English. I apologize. My French is not what I could hope, but bon après-midi. Good afternoon. Thank you. So we talked about this already with my introduction. The future lies in understanding the consumer's intent. I have been in digital marketing for 15 years, and I believe that we are at an incredible moment of change that will create extraordinary opportunities for everyone in the room to be at the customer's moment of intent. So I'm going to share with you a little bit about the concept. I've already had this conversation this morning at lunch. I think it makes sense for the market, and then hopefully leave you with a few tangible actions that you can think about that can impact your brand. So I worked at Yahoo. I ran the paid search business in the US. And we all have been trained to think about keywords, right? So Taylor, creme brulee. I got educated on Kylian Mbappe and how to say his name, his shoes that are coming out. We'll talk more about his event later. But what's happening is that keywords have changed. Customers are asking questions. And so those questions may be, where is the shoe signing near me? Most of us probably don't want to know how many calories are in creme brulee, but people are looking for the answers to questions like that. And it goes on and on. Pediatric cardiologist with availability. Are there job openings at a given store with Louis Vuitton? This is how consumers are seeking to take actions in their customer journey. And I'm going to get more tangible on that in just a minute. So this is a great example for here of a type of consumer intent. What is the best cafe in Paris that's great for kids that has bathrooms? But why has this changed? Why have consumers moved from keywords to questions, right? And it's because of the applications and the products and the apps that we are using every day now. Of course, we all know Google Maps. We, as Americans, use TripAdvisor when we come here. This would be a query that I would absolutely expect people to do. But we also have different places like Amazon and Alexa. And that voice search is changing. We are expecting that we can get the answers because of natural language. And we're seeing this everywhere. And consumers, guys, and this is really the key, they have changing expectations. They expect brands to be able to have the answer because of these experiences. We know the knowledge graph in Google, and that is giving consumers one answer. We're not having to make decisions in search. So this is the fundamental core of the message, is because of this changing consumer experience, because of the consumer-facing apps, people expect a different experience. So let's talk about what a journey might be. I'm having these conversations with a lot of a new type of role, a customer experience officer. I was at Deutsche Bank last Thursday with their CMO. He has now added this title to his CMO role, and we're seeing more of this in Europe. It's becoming pretty prevalent in the US, and this is the type of thing that an experience officer has to think about. What is the changing in consumer experience? So I may be preparing for a cycling tournament. I'm ready to make a decision on a new bike, and I'm going to ask some questions. What is the best brand? And I may go to a cycling blog to look for that and identify the best product. I then may ask about the best gears. I may go to Facebook, join a community to ask that question. I may go to Amazon and ask more about the product specifications, and on and on. Ultimately, I may go to the Trek brand, to their chatbot, and find out where the nearest store is near me that's open, that carries that product. And ultimately, guys, and we'll talk about it later, if you are not managing your brand, everywhere the consumers are on this customer journey, you have a potential to lose that customer. Again, if you think about it, and I'm sure many of you are thinking about these consumer journeys and the mapping, but this is a perfect example of a lost opportunity or an incredible opportunity if you're there at that moment of intent. So let's talk about it. I talked, starting out, intent. We believe that questions are intent. And the consumer, and this is where the GDPR part comes in. If you're able to meet the customer at the intent, to be the answer, you don't have to know anything about their demographics, anything about their buying decisions. They have already told you their intent. It's pretty simple. It's right there. But it's harder than it might seem to do that. And we believe that you have to do some things to make sure that your brand is the answer. So let's talk about a query. We're going to shift gears from Trek and other products to Land Rover Jaguar, who's a huge client of us here in Europe and also in France. So this is a very typical type of question. What is the best dealership near me open now with used Range Rover Sport? There's a couple of things happening in this. I've got ratings and reviews. I've got hours of operation. I've got geography-based data, categories, and product information. We'll talk more about this in a second, but you have to have a data strategy to be able to be prepared to be the answer to the question. And this is all natural language processing, which we all hear about a ton, right? But you need a technique and you need a solution to help you manage the data. We just heard, I loved it, from the SNCF, the railroad gentleman, talking about pulling his digital assets together. And I thought it was super interesting and a great segue. So we can think about, if we don't have the data, we're going to have a missed purchase. But let's talk about how we can help manage that. So I've already said it, right? This is the way that we can get by GDPR. But let's talk about specifically what Land Rover Jaguar is doing to make sure that they have their data prepared to be able to be the answer to that question. Okay. So every brand has data. We heard about those assets living in other places. Could be the data on my stores, products, restaurants, menus, offers, special events, and the list goes on and on. Right? We all have that living in our organization. But today, there isn't a way to create a knowledge graph or relationships between those data elements. We're still living in a world that I've seen, and I've worked with over 1,200 enterprise grants globally. I've yet to find somebody who has a real strategy and a way to create a true relational database. So the knowledge graph is the innovation. This is what we all see when we go to Google and we're putting it in and we get the answer, is because Google has built a knowledge graph, and it's creating those relationships between the brands, the categories, the products, the offers, the events, all of these things, and creating that relationship with your own data. So let's talk about what Land Rover Jaguar does. So the typical kind of core data elements that they have is their dealership information, the dealer itself, the dealer groups, many of them are associated in a given region, the car, the products that they sell, and also the departments. Many of these dealerships, but not all, have a used car department, they may have a servicing department, they may have other departments as well. So this is kind of the current situation, and creating those relationships is what we do for them. So the way that we do that, and you'll see the question up top, is by having that data, we can answer, is there a dealership near me? We create that relationship between the dealership and the address. So that's a very simple question that I hope most of you have a basic strategy to ensure you can answer for consumers. But here's a more complex one. When Land Rover repairs departments, is there a department in Paris that's open now? So we have to create that relationship between the category, which is the department, it's a part of a dealership, and we have the address and the hours. And we've created that relationship for them. Here's another question, even more complicated. What is the best dealership near me open now with a used Range Rover Sport? So we actually introduced for the first time, and we integrated in with their inventory system, the used car inventory. Because in general, what we've seen, again, I'm a consumer. I'm saying to the engine or wherever I'm doing this search, I'm interested in a specific model of a product in a given region near me in Paris that's open, that has this product. Maybe I want to test drive, right? That is what we mean when we say meeting the customer at the moment of intent. I can't think of how much they would have to pay to buy the paid ad on this, right? And compete, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So again, our knowledge graph is providing and linking those relationships with the model and the model year at the dealership with the hours of operation to ensure that they can be the answer to that high value customer question. So back to the questions that we asked earlier, right? When is the shoe signing? Where is their tailor in the 7th near me? The best pediatric cardiologist. So I'm sure you were all waiting with deep anticipation. Here are the answers, right? So creme brulee, 700 calories, right? Lannerai, right near here, is a great tailor. Dr. Gabrielle. These brands, if they control their data, can ensure that they're the answer, which is amazing. So let's end on two things very tangible. I hope that the concepts make sense, but ultimately, why does it matter? I work with marketers every day. We all are tasked with a couple of very simple things: being effective with our marketing spend and driving customer acquisition. Being the answer to these questions, right? These longer tail, high intent questions. As a total sidebar, Google has come out, all questions are more, 70% of all questions are more than 3 words now. So that's what we mean by that longer intent questions. They account for 25% of all searches. We see an incredibly higher level of clicking because, again, my question had such high level of intent, and they convert at a much higher level. We've seen this very consistently, and what does that ultimately mean? Lower customer acquisition cost at the moment of intent without having to deal with any of the challenges with GDPR. So we know that it works, and we think it's incredibly powerful for our customers. So I'll leave you with a couple of action items. If you buy our hypothesis and our thinking, and we believe we know it because Google is saying the exact same thing with intent, we're having the same conversations with Amazon, all of the consumer-facing applications are seeing this trend. So it's highly cost-effective. How can each of you be prepared for this new reality? And we believe there are 3 things that you can do. 1, it's understanding those assets that you have. And again, the speaker earlier talked about that, and building out or having a strategy on how you or your customers, if you're an agency or a marketing arm of a company, is going to gather this data. It lives in the organizations. We've seen that over and over and over, but having a strategy about how you can bring it together and make that into your own knowledge graph is step number 1. You have to be able to answer the questions yourself. I would encourage all of you to think about a very basic customer question that a consumer may have about you and go to your own site and ask that question. It's pretty revelatory. When you ask the calories question on McDonald's site, I know McDonald's was up here earlier, they're a huge client of ours, you cannot get the answer. Google has the answer. McDonald's does not have the answer on their own site. So that's what we mean. Do you have a strategy to ensure that when these high-value customers come to your own site, that you can be the answer for those most important customer questions? And lastly, make sure everywhere consumers are searching, Google, Apple Maps, TripAdvisor, CK Trip, for Chinese tourists that are coming here, to France, and on, Amazon Alexa, that you have a strategy to ensure that you can be the answer. I hope this information was interesting to you, and thank you so much for the opportunity to share the story. Thank you.
Very interesting, very interesting.